Okay, so let's talk about emotions. This is tricky because I want to keep it brief and focused, but there's a lot of nuance to balance when we talk about emotions and how they interact with healthy conflict. I think the starting premise that we just are all going to have to agree on, I'm going to propose this, you can decide if you agree or not, is that emotions exist. That can't be helped. Like gravity, like electricity, emotions simply exist. And emotions can be very good, right? Joy and just feeling overwhelmed with positivity, crying happy tears, feeling the wind is in your sails. I mean, love, obviously, right? Famous, it's kind of a famous emotion. There's really good emotions out there, and there's really bad emotions out there. And there's just no way to choose one side or the other. Are emotions good or are they bad? Are they helpful or are they hurtful? It so depends on the situation. There's no way to just boil it down. So, this is where we have to delicately walk the tightrope in healthy conflict of acknowledging that emotions are real. Sometimes one of the partners has a temptation to say, you're overreacting, you're being too sensitive, your feelings are crazy, and I shouldn't have to engage in this conversation because of that. And it's not that there maybe isn't something true, right, about that, that maybe those emotions that they're complaining about, maybe they aren't helpful, right? Maybe they are not helpful in that moment. And the person hearing that is only going to feel, wow, right? This person I thought I could trust really doesn't care at all about how I'm feeling. Really, they just don't like, they're uncomfortable with the fact that I'm having big feelings and they are just trying to turn away from me. It's quite possible that neither of those perspectives is really right. So, again, I'm going to keep saying this, I guess. Again, we're walking this tightrope of, okay, emotions are real. They are important. They tell us, they're signals, right? From our sort of our inner knowing, our soul, whatever language you want to use, right? They're sort of a signal from our body and our brain that something is up. Something really good is up, something bad, something nervous. Emotions are real and they usually tell us something. Emotions are not always helpful. Emotions are not always right. All of these things are true. If you're familiar with dialectics at all, you have some understanding that these kind of opposing or not quite, right? These things don't quite all work out perfectly, or how do you hold them? You know what I'm trying to say. We just have to accept that emotions are powerful and they're real and they're not always helpful. So we do actually have to have a strategy or a plan for how do we navigate big emotions during healthy conflict, because, and if you're watching this, you might already know this from just lived experience. Big, powerful emotions can totally derail your conversation. And if every time you try to have a, a change oriented conversation, right? Something's not working for me. This is from the soft startup. XYZ thing happened. It really made me disconnected from you. Here's what I would really like to be close to you. If every time you try to have that conversation, it always explodes, you'll never get anywhere. And many partnerships, many relational dynamics, regardless of romantic, family, get trapped in exactly that. I try to bring something up, it explodes and spirals out into an absolute mess, and nothing happens. So everything stays the same. Terry Real, Relational Life Therapy, he calls this stable ambiguity. Nothing really changes. It's just hovering, and somebody gets upset, and okay, and they come back, and it's just a stable ambiguity. I'm not committed to changing, one way or the other. I won't leave. I won't stay. I won't give you what you want, but I won't completely turn away and end the relationship either. And that sucks. That actually really sucks. Nobody feels good in that situation. It's really a situation I think we all want to avoid. So I'm keep making the case to you, why healthy conflict? Because we don't want that. You want to be able to work, as I said in the soft startup, work the pizza dough a little bit of your relationship. If something's not working, you want to be able to address that. I digress. I'm getting a little bit off topic here. Managing emotions. Let's get back to the point of this particular video. We first need to understand the threshold of sort of emotional tolerance. There's a window of tolerance. I cannot remember the author who created the window of tolerance just at the moment, but it's a really awesome sort of visual aid for kind of emotion regulation stuff. There's a window of tolerance we all have. And at a certain point, right, as the tension rises, here's our threshold, yeah? The tension rises, it's going up, and you say this and I say that, and we're getting more and more heated. And at a certain point, you cross over that threshold, at which point you are in fight or flight. Fight, flight, freeze. Over the years, more and more Fs have been added. I'm just going to call it fight or flight for brevity. And the Gottmans, they use a different F word that actually condenses it all down into one, which is flooded. Your brain, right? Your brain is flooded with these action chemicals. Adrenaline, cortisol, right? Something is wrong. I'm under threat and I have to take action, and there's no time for thinking clearly. You absolutely cannot have productive, healthy conflict if either one of the parties involved is flooded. It is not possible. So don't try. This is where step one of your kind of emotional management framework, this is where step one comes in, which is passive monitoring. You need to develop, this is a mindfulness technique, if you've heard of mindfulness, you really need to cultivate a habit, kind of a background process just running in your psyche, right? Of checking in on your emotional state, on your physical and emotional state. There's, of course, a tightrope balance there of not becoming sort of, I don't want to use diagnostic language, but not getting maybe trapped in a sort of a nervous cycle of always checking in on, oh my gosh, what's going on every single moment. But kind of a just throughout my day, I check in. What's going on for me? How do I feel in my body, in my heart? How do I feel? And this is just going, right? So that if you're in this habit, you'll still be doing that during tougher conversations, right? That might be sort of conflict conversations. You can check in on yourself, which means that you'll notice if, again, this is our threshold, right? If you start climbing, you should be able to notice that, right? And the better you get at checking in on yourself, the better you get at noticing where you're at in that climb. And the better you get at noticing, the better you get at actually doing something. So it starts with that, like, how is my body feeling? Am I going up? Am I stable? Am I fine here? Am I downshifting? That's really getting you to step two. Step one is you have this passive monitoring of your emotional state, which includes physical. You'll have physiological symptoms, racing heart, sort of tension in your chest and your sort of forehead, and kind of, tense. Thing number two, prong number two, I think is like a kind of a 3-prong approach. So prong number two is active management. So we have passive monitoring, just running through, checking in on myself. We have active management. It is vital that every person, every human being, it really is vital that you develop emotion regulation strategies and have those in your own toolbox. This is just fundamental. It's not really taught in schools for the most part, unfortunately, and it's not always taught at home effectively. But everybody needs to have ways of downshifting their emotional state that work for them. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this. Some really famous, time-honored examples include emotion regulation and distress tolerance skills from dialectical behavioral therapy, which we call DBT. Unhooking and dropping anchor, which comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, which we often call ACT. Meditation, yogic traditions, prayer. All of these can work. Many of these have, decades, if not thousands of years of history behind them. And it's not an exhaustive list. The things that work for you, go into another room, take a break, just put your face in ice water, have a drink of water, yeah? The things that work for you to help downshift, right, once you have gotten either getting close to the threshold or even crossed that threshold, you need to have those. And fully talking about all those skills is really beyond the scope of this video. That's where I would recommend any individual, when I do work with couples, I would recommend any individual have a one-on-one therapist, right? Have an individual therapist outside of couples therapy, because that's a specific thing that we're doing These kind of emotion regulation skills, you really have to work on them for yourself. You really have to develop them for yourself. Your partner, the other person in this dynamic, they're going to need to have emotion regulation strategies of their own, right? Which may be similar to yours. They may be totally different. And they better have worked on those too. So you might be hearing this, oh, that's not fair. I don't want to do this work. Okay. You cannot want to do the work. And that is your choice. And it sucks that we have to do the work. But really and truly, we all need to have some amount of emotional regulation skills in our toolbox in order to have healthy, fulfilling relationships. You do have to be able to somewhat manage. I'm not talking about perfect lockdown. I'm the master of my feelings. I'm saying when we get close to that flooding point, when we get close, or we do even cross the line, is really incumbent on all of us to actually be able to work with our feelings, to be able to self-soothe for our own sake and for the sake of people around us. Okay, this is getting long, so let me try to move on ahead. The third and final prong of what do we do with emotions is your fail-safe break. Fail-safe break. Okay, the name kind of tells you a lot about the point. This is your last resort. When one person is flooded, no conversation can happen. So unfortunately, right, it's a really unfair kind of a on-off switch. If someone becomes flooded, the capacity for productive conflict has gone to zero temporarily. In that event, which will happen no matter how skillful you are, no matter how skillful they are, we're only humans. We all have breaking points. We all have bad days. There will be times when somebody becomes flooded, maybe both, and you just actually have to take a break. And you better both agree, right? Outside of conflict, you better both agree that when someone says, hey, you know what, I'm getting flooded, I've reached my limit, I just need to take a cool down. You better agree that that's important for your relationship, that you respect that you do that, and that you have a plan for how to come back together. Separate video, right? This is already getting long enough. That'll be a separate thing. This video, this topic is just about emotions and how they interact with conflict. I recommend for you a three-pronged approach. You may find something else that works for you. You may already have something else that works for you. I recommend, number one, passive monitoring. Again, this is a mindfulness technique. You're checking in with yourself. Is my heart rate going up? Do I feel my vein in my forehead popping out? Is something going on that is signaling to me that I'm having big emotions, that I'm feeling angry, frustrated, upset, under threat? 2, active management. When I notice that again, here's my threshold, yeah? When I notice that I'm going up, do I have tools that I can consciously, actively work the levers and the knobs, right? I need to cool off. I need to do something to bring myself down a little bit. I need to actually put something new into the system, change what's happening here. And 3, fail-safe break. If all else fails, right? If those first 2 things fail, and they will sometimes, especially early on in developing healthy conflict, when some of these skills you don't have as much experience, when they aren't muscle memory, when they aren't second nature, you're gonna need to take a break. And there's a way to skillfully do that, and there's many ways to unskillfully do that. And I'll make a separate video because this is already going on close to 15 minutes. And this day and age, that's beyond most of our attention span. So, emotions. That's the topic of this, emotions. 3-pronged approach. Think about it, right? Let it marinate in your mind. Think about it. Passive monitoring. Do you have that skill? Can you cultivate that skill? Tools, active management tools. Do you have those tools? Could you work with a therapist to develop those tools? 3, taking a break. When it all else fails, take a break. Come back to it when you're both in a cooler head. There's no shame and blame, no judgment for someone getting flooded. It will happen to all of us. All right, I hope that's helpful. Leave some comments. Have you tried things like this before? Do you know these techniques? Have they worked for you? Have they not worked for you? Have you found something else? I'd love to hear. And go forth and be a blessing.